So, Mega Man X DiVE Offline has recently graced the Steam community, and many Mega Man fans are wondering what to make of it. Should you play it? What game is this? Is this the long-awaited X9? That kind of stuff. Originally, I wasn't planning on talking about this at all when it was announced, but after I got a couple of requests to do so, I figured, why not? I can dip my feet back into the Mega Man X pool for a few minutes. So let's take a step back and talk about what this game is. This is a mobile phone game that first appeared in Asian countries as Rockman X DiVE in early 2020, following a beta test period in late 2019. Despite my interest in covering Mega Man X titles, I held off on reviewing it for a long time because mobile games aren't really my thing, besides ports of games I already liked, such as Sonic or Ace Attorney. The Mega Man franchise had a history of releasing mobile ports too, but these were pretty regularly terrible. I feel like X DiVE was the first attempt at a Mega Man mobile game that was taken really seriously by Capcom and the audience at large. Mega Man X DiVE came to Steam as a free-to-play game a few years back, and when that happened, I had a feeling I would talk about it at some point. In June of 2022, I had done just that. I was pretty split on it, feeling like for mobile standards it was a pretty good approximation of Mega Man X gameplay, however I thought the microtransactions were particularly egregious. But earlier this year, Capcom revealed a new version coming to Steam called Mega Man X DiVE Offline, which is a game you pay $30 for and you get to just play the game removed from all that in-game payment stuff. For this video, I'm going to take the exact same approach to talking about X DiVE that I did before. This game, as an online experience that had been going on for years, had its own massive meta game, but I'm not involved with that element of the community at all. So I just got the game and played it to the best of my ability and commented on my experience, and can use that to recommend the game or not to the average Mega Man fan who hadn't heard of it before or perhaps had never thought of trying it. So let's do it all over again. X DiVE Offline handles exactly the same as playing the online version on Steam, so I'll reiterate my thoughts on that from the previous video, so that you don't have to go rewatch that obsolete video to understand what's different in Offline. Though I do have some opinions updated since I had a better grasp on the handling this time around. The game was designed for players to press buttons on a touchscreen to play it, but when playing it with an Xbox Series controller on PC, I think it works pretty well. The button mapping is fully customizable like all the other X games, and so I had shooting on square, jumping on X, dashing on L1, secondary attacks on circle plus L2 and R2, and switching to my sub-weapon on the R1 button. I just said I played this with an Xbox controller, but that's just because that has the highest compatibility with Windows applications. I'm a PlayStation guy at heart though. And those buttons are the default when I write a script for a video. Anyway, I don't think X DiVE feels on par with, say, X1 to X6 and X8, but I don't think it had to. The only issue I can see coming up for players used to the console games is that you can only control your character of choice with the analog stick and not the D-pad. But I don't think X DiVE ever forces you to be super precise in terms of movement, so the analog stick worked just fine for me. In the original version, you controlled the game on a touch-controlled wheel, and the analog stick is a much more natural placement for this than the D-pad. And the screen had a dash button and a jump button, so using buttons for those on a controller is going to feel better than it did on a touchscreen. Largely, I think it's impressive that it's so accurate to how the 2D games felt, while also giving the player a sense of flow as you dash jump, wall jump, shoot, and slash your way through the hordes of enemies. On that note, I thought the combat felt pretty satisfying. The characters all need to lock onto their enemies to shoot them, which might sound like a repeat of Mega Man X7, but context is crucial to deciding if this is good design or not. The difference is that in this game, your positioning is still the important part of hitting your enemies, as not all shots travel across the whole screen. And when shooting is on a button you have to touch, making it automatic just makes the game flow better than it would have if you had to control your positioning and your aim with these controls. In X7, it was just so bizarre that you had to lock on during these 2D segments where you brainlessly mashed the shoot button because the designers didn't think to take the Z-axis away from the enemies. Yeah, frigid take incoming, but X7 sure was bad, am I right? Don't worry though, I'm not done taking the piss out of that game. Just you wait for a video I have coming up in a few weeks. It's also pretty handy in X DiVE how you don't have to mash the buttons to shoot or even saber slash anymore. You can just hold the attack button and the game will take care of the rest. Every attack in the game has a meter for how long it can be used, and when it's up or just stop using it, the timer will grow back to max capacity. Something I noticed early in this game was that X, or whoever you're playing as, when firing at their enemies will walk backwards while still facing forwards and shooting. I actually think this is a mechanic that could be put to good use in the main series. Before, if you wanted to get away from your enemies and keep hitting them, you have to go back in that direction and then turn around to keep hitting them. I never once thought about what strafing could be like in a Mega Man side-scroller, but seeing this has me convinced this could be an interesting mechanic in a 2D Mega Man platformer. Enemies move fast in X DiVE, so backing up while shooting was handy on multiple occasions. Although I sometimes had an issue with not being able to control what direction X or whoever was going in while firing, and I needed to stop and let the game reset the controls, which was a detriment in the middle of combat. What plays pretty much exactly how you'd expect is slashing with the saber weapons. When I first unlocked one as X, I thought it was cool to see him just go combo mad all over the enemies, but this is just how every character functions and it's pretty fun to do. Especially using the spin slash to destroy all the enemies in my path. They also brought in slashing on the move from the Mega Man Zero series for that extra degree of combat control. But of course, I don't think X-Dive is really about the gameplay, it's about the nostalgia of the franchise. As I've mentioned a couple times now, you don't just play as Mega Man X in this one, you play a whole host of characters from across the history of Mega Man. This was always the thing about DiVE that interested me the most from launch all the way up until now. All the characters play the same with a dash, a double jump, and an air dash, but this massive roster of Mega Man characters are all accompanied by new pieces of artwork, and whenever we got a new one, I go check it out in the gallery of the Mega Man wiki to see what they looked like. From classic Mega Man to various armors from the X series, mini-bosses like holograms from X2 and X3 get a render and a bio. The intro bosses from X2 and X3 get that, the Mavericks are all here with new renders and models and artwork, and so do the heroes. Classic series characters like Proto Man, various characters from all over the X series, including party members and boss characters from X Command Mission, Zero Series Zero, NCL, Ale from ZX, Volnut, Tronbon, and the Servbots from Mega Man Legends, the EXE characters from the Battle Network games, and even Mega Man Star Force's representation. It's a true celebration of the Mega Man franchise's history, and I felt like it was always an exciting element of the game, seeing which things would make a comeback and being excited for whatever classic X armor would return next, and even seeing some new ones alongside them. The stage roster also pulls from the various X games, but then you'll see there are levels from ZX and ZX Advent, Mega Man 7, Mega Man 8, and even Mega Man Network Transmission, the Battle Network GameCube spin-off. Things like this get me really excited as a fan. Though I thought it was super disappointing when I played the grass stage from ZX1 and they used a Mega Man 2 Woodman remix instead of actually remixing Green Grass Gradation from ZX, when that track and the whole soundtrack for that game were superb. But still, going through all the models and seeing the different animations that called back to various moments from series history was like the endgame Portals scene, but for Mega Man fans. It's also really funny too. If you wanted to play as classic Mega Man or a Servbot tearing through enemies with a Gatling gun and a massive beam saber, this is the game for you. The story is pretty blatantly empty in this game though. The data of the Mega Man franchise is in peril, and now you, the longtime fan, must venture into the cyber realm to save the day. It's really just an excuse to go through all these old Mega Man levels and play this huge roster of Mega Man characters, and that's a lot of content. I mean, this game has over 20 worlds, and most of them have several stages, so this game can keep you busy for a while if you're into it. And that's the area that truly separated X-Dive Online from X-Dive Offline. In the previous iteration, it may have been free to play, but playing the game as a newcomer made all that cool content feel permanently out of reach because of high stat requirements and microtransactions. This is the biggest thing I had against the entire experience in my video last year. I constantly felt underpowered and would be battling the same boss for maybe over 10 minutes at a time because they wouldn't take significant damage and I would just die in 2 seconds, which also then forced me to have to buy more lives with actual money. It just made the game a slog to try and play, so I eventually just gave up. Especially because of the fact that in the online original, in order to beat the game, you had to play these hard mode versions of the worlds you already beat, which really soured the whole thing for me because now you had versions of every world that I felt were more tedious than the ones I already slowly marched my way through. This then made the content feel really repetitive and increased my want to just drop the game entirely. X-Dive Offline is a complete turnaround from that. This game has no mechanic to spend your actual money on it, which is a huge improvement. In comparison to the original, I felt better while playing offline because I was leveling up almost every stage, and your reward for beating every stage is around 100,000 of the in-game currency that you can use to buy new weapons, new characters, and increase the power levels of all your favorite weapons. With that, my Gatling gun was just plowing through enemies like it was nobody's business. Plus, I also unlocked S-Class Zero and S-Class X really quickly and made use of them throughout my play sessions. But I also unlocked a lot of other cool characters like Super Mega Man from Mega Man 6. He was pretty fun to use because not only could he double jump and air dash, but he could also fly up like he could with the jet form from Mega Man 6. But then I also managed to unlock Second Armor X from Mega Man X2, and he was exactly what I was hoping for since you can do the double charge shot from X2 that destroyed enemies like it was nothing, and in X-Dive Offline this attack would do like 8,000 damage. You now have enough currency to buy plenty of lives too, and I would go to the shop regularly to replenish my supply, but the trick is that you can only revive 3 times in one stage to make sure the game doesn't become too mindless. But despite all that, this still was my largest issue with X-Dive Offline after playing it for a few hours. Despite the fact that the offline version was balanced much better and was made more accessible for those who aren't interested in the grind, I just don't think this game is particularly engaging to play. When I started playing the online version and when I started playing the offline version, my thoughts were, this is really cool, I could see myself finishing this both times. However, the longer I played, the more I was thinking, yeah, this is alright, but I'm not really having that much fun. I think that's just the nature of X-Dive as a mobile game. You just aren't really meant to sit down and binge this game like I can for a good console X game, or even the ones I don't like for that matter. Mobile games are geared towards short bursts of playtime. You put it on while riding on the bus or something, and you clear a couple of the short stages, and you keep doing that to fill time while you wait in lobbies or ride public transit or whatever. I don't really play mobile games for that reason because I'm often not doing that kind of thing, so the model just doesn't grab me that much. So when I'm playing XDive offline on my PC, it just feels like an endless amount of content that allows me to play a really good approximation of Mega Man X gameplay and with tons of fun nostalgia, but it's still not something I find super compelling to play. The further I got into the game, the more I had a different issue from the online version. Before, it would be an issue for me that I'd be completely underpowered against all the enemies, but now I'm super powerful but also made of glass too. So it was more or less a war of attrition. I'm willing to bet that's some kind of a skill issue or a lack of understanding with the menus and unlockables and such, but still, I can't change the fact that I felt that the game was just not the most balanced experience, even if I thought it was miles ahead of my experience with the online version. Also, this game is worth $30. Price is more of a subjective matter, but I just don't think this game is fun enough to be worth paying that much for. In terms of content, I think the game provides enough playtime to be worthy of it, but that's also only if you're really into it, which I personally wasn't after a few hours of playing it. The Mega Man X Legacy Collection Volume 1 has 4 of my favorite games on it, X1, X2, X3, and X4, and that's only $20. Hell, Mega Man 11 was $30, and that's certainly a more interesting experience in terms of moment-to-moment gameplay. So am I saying you shouldn't play XDive offline? Well, I'm definitely not saying that. If you're a hardcore Mega Man fan and just want to experience all this cool nostalgia for the franchise and get a game with a lot to play in it, then sure, XDive is something you might like. It has cool ideas and artwork, and that can't be taken away from the game at all. However, I just don't think it's an interesting enough experience to warrant the price tag. So I think if you're a big Mega Man fan and have not tried it, the offline edition is the perfect way to get into it, but I'd say wait for a sale. At 15 or 20 bucks, this is an easy recommendation than at the full $30. But yeah, that's basically all I had to say on the matter. My thoughts on the gameplay are made almost exactly the same, but the game went up in my estimation just via the removal of all the free-to-play tropes that bogged the experience down immensely when I first played it. Some expressed concern that Capcom sees no value in the Mega Man franchise besides pumping out XDive content, which means we'll never see X9 ever, and all that. But I think people should be less alarmist about this sort of thing. Mega Man 11 and the Battle Network Legacy Collection were both some of the most successful Mega Man releases of all time, so I think it's only a matter of time before something new is released. So until that time, I just say be patient, replay these fun games we already have, or try other stuff perhaps. But to close the video, I must say I am glad people requested I cover this. The timing was incredibly fortuitous because I have a big Mega Man X project in the works that I think everyone in my audience who loves Mega Man will not want to miss out on. This was a nice way to cover some Mega Man in the lead up to that and further get people excited. So I hope everyone's looking forward to that because it's only 2 weeks away from release. In the meantime, I'll say what I always do. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.